Now, the Egyptians also knew that culture was not only necessarily a good thing, as of course all of you know, because no doubt sometimes you note that you're the beneficiary of your culture, but sometimes no doubt you also feel that you're like crushed and mistreated and molded and bent out of shape by the culture, because the culture says, you better act like everybody else expects you to. And of course that's necessary, but you're not exactly like everybody else, so you kind of get mangled and crunched and, you know, malformed as you're socialized, even though you also learn to speak and you learn to read and you learn all those things that culture can provide with you. Now, the Egyptians knew even 3,000 years ago that although culture was necessary, and it was an element of existence that human beings were always embedded in, that's why it's a permanent category. There's no non-cultural people. You can't be a human being without a culture. It's not possible. We're evolved. Our physiological form presumes that we're going to emerge into the world in a culture, and that will inform us as we develop. That's why we have such a long developmental period, right? We're born unformed, and the only reason that works is because the lack of form has been consistently manifested in an environment that would form it. So culture isn't just culture, it's the environment that we inhabit, because culture has been around for so long. And I'll give you one example of that. So a big part of every culture is a dominance hierarchy, right? And a dominance hierarchy says who has what access to what at what given time. And pretty much every creature is in a dominance hierarchy. Chickens are in dominance hierarchies. That's the pecking order, right? Members of wolves packs are in dominance hierarchies. Members of chimpanzee troops are in dominance hierarchies. Songbirds are in dominance hierarchies. You know, you hear them sing in the spring, it's all pretty. It's not. Little bird is sitting out there saying, I'm healthy and loud, and if you come over here, I'll peck you to death, because this is my tree. And so the songbirds distribute themselves around the neighborhood by dominance. And the more dominant birds get the better nesting spaces. And better means they don't get rained on, or at least not as much. Their nests don't get blown out of trees. There's not so many cats around. And they're close to a good food source. And so that makes them attractive to potential mating partners, but it also increases the probability that their chicks will survive. And so, and here's the nasty bit of truth that goes along with that. So let's say there's a bunch of birds in the neighborhood, and some kind of bird flu that's specific to birds comes wafting through, and it's killing birds. Well, the birds die from the bottom of the dominance hierarchy up. And the reason for that is the bottom birds are all stressed out because their life is hard. And when they're stressed, their immune system gets suppressed, and they're all frazzled from being chased by cats and so on, and then they die. And so the top birds live. And the same thing happens in human populations. When a plague sweeps through, people die from the bottom of the dominance hierarchy up. And so dominance hierarchies matter. And so birds have them and lizards have them. And fish have them. So in a school of fish, the dominant fish, when the fish ball up, they do that to make it hard for predators to eat them. The big dominant fish are in the middle of that ball. The little sucker, useless fish are on the outside, and that's who gets eaten up when the predators come along. So, and we know that dominance hierarchies stretch back a very long time. So we know, for example, that lobsters live in dominance hierarchies. I told you a little bit about that. And they're about 300 million years old. So what that means is that we've been existing inside a cultural structure, because the culture is predicated on a dominance hierarchy, right? That's the patriarchy, if you want to use, a politically correct term. That's been around for 300 million years. So to think about it as a permanent constituent element of reality is extremely useful.